All right, so hello again, everybody. Welcome to the Asian Corporate and Entrepreneur Leaders speaker series. Today we have, we started a new series because before we just realized we had a whole bunch of guys going on. So we thought it's time to go let some of the, I call them the Asian boss ladies, go on. So this is the first of a series of women speakers. And we affectionately named it Women Empowerment Series. So I know we have a couple of very empowered women on today to present to us. Before we start, I'm going to talk a little bit about what ACEL is. Again, ACEL stands for the Asian Corporate and Entrepreneur Leaders. So there's the corporate part of it and the entrepreneur part of it. And it kind of shows that we can kind of help people professionally in their careers, but also in different alternate kind of processes as well, other alternate career paths as well. We are focused on leadership development and have themes of mentorship and networking. And this is something that our organization does through these events. And we used to do in-person events, and we will again someday. But that's kind of what we're all about. So the first speaker is going to be Anne. We'll introduce her in a second. But we have two more coming up. We have an women entrepreneur panel coming up with 3 entrepreneurs. One is Kelly, who's on today, and she's on the ACEL board. She is what I call a semipreneur. So she's a corporate and has her own business. And then we have 2 others that we are confirming. After that, we actually have a vice president of R&D at one of P&G's competitor companies that will be joining. So it'll be fun to grill her a little bit on that. So that'll be down the road, probably sometime in October. So we're excited. We've got plenty of great women leaders as well. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jennifer Kong. Jennifer.
Hello, so I'll be your host for today, which is very fitting for me because I've worked in corporate for 12 years at L'Oreal, also starting off in operations, and now have progressed on into roles that deal with the marketing and business teams. So I identify a lot with Anne, and fun fact is that we have the same birthdays, which is in September, and we're both Tigers. So hope you guys enjoy this this kickoff to our Women Empowerment Series. So Anne, I'll kick it off to you. We should start sharing screens.
Awesome. Do you want me to share the screen then?
Yes.
All right.
And we're going to try to keep this conversation organic. So of course, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ping it in the chat, and we'll try to get to it as early as we can. But we definitely want this to, flow, as nicely as possible. So, awesome. And of course, we'll have a Q&A at the end.
All right. So can you guys see my screen? This is where we test everything and everything worked, and then all of a sudden it's not working. Oh my goodness. Hang on.
All good. We also have a copy of it. So
do you want, could you share it? Just like making me go through a bunch of settings. Is that okay? Would you mind sharing it?
I can try.
I sent you a file today earlier.
Yep,
yes.
I've got it. By the way, Zoom stock went up 30% a couple days ago. Wonder why. Let me close out all the other screens.
That's weird.
My my basketball team just lost, so I just turned that off.
Sorry. Is it Milwaukee Bucks?
Yeah, it's the Milwaukee Bucks just lost. All right, let's see.
The title screen is good. You want to start there?
Share screen.
Awesome. Thank you, Dale.
Working? Sure.
Yep. I think you can just put it in presentation mode, and I'll tell you when to advance if that's okay. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Thanks Jen and Dale for the introduction. Jen's definitely my fellow sister Virgo Tiger, and we got really excited when we found out that we had so much in common just to start on our birthdays. But I wanted to thank you guys for inviting me here, and just really thanking the guests who are joining here tonight, because I know you're investing valuable time out of your schedule. So I'll get into, I want to going to give this talk a name. It's Maximizing Your 5, and I'll go into it in a little bit. But before I go into that, I was going to give you guys a little bit of introduction about my life, just to provide you with some context. And then, like I said, I'll frame the discussion around this power of 5 notion. And these are really roles that I have defined for myself, and roles that really evolved, that shaped me and who I am and how I behave and how I lead. And so hopefully with this discussion, you know, I can share with you the experience that have empowered me, and hopefully there will be insights that can help you regardless of what industry or what sector you work in, corporate or entrepreneur. Okay, next slide, Dale.
Oh, sorry. Too many
Back one. Yep. And that's it, we're done.
There we go.
There we go. All right, so this is like my elevator speech, but a little bit about me. I'll start like on the left, like the passions that I have in life. You can see I'm married and I have 2 kids. They really round out the passion of my life. I love being a mom, whether it's, well, most of the time I love being a mom. Maybe not this week, because I'm trying to get my kid to actually work on his college app essay. So maybe not so much. I love being a mom. I love like all the things that come with it. You know, even probably back then, staying up, watching them overnight and not sleeping through the night. And then my kids are really involved in sports, all the carpool stuff. So it really is a passion for me. And I think, I know it extends out beyond my family. I think at work a lot of times, good or bad, I'm called the momager. Passion is just, or people are just a big passion of mine. Yeah, it shows up because I think like I would think in the last 2 years, 3 years at P&G, I've managed the most new hires in the US for P&G, as well as summer interns. And so it's a really cool way for me to get that nourishment that I need, that's enabled me to work on things that relate to the passion area. And I love to travel outside of work. I love to travel. I love to learn. I'm a big learner, so you can give me any topic and I'll just jump in and research. So those are some of the fun passions I have. And you know, I've ran 3 marathons, so sometimes I'm active when I'm not shelter in place. And then the values on the right, you can see a picture of my family. You know, the big thing is I'm a big relationships person. I value relationship and I value trust. And so with me, whether you're my friend or whoever I work with, partnership with, you know, trust is something that is that you don't have to earn with me. It's something that you would lose, but everybody starts at, you know, full trust. And I find that you know, a really meaningful way to engage and interact with the folks in my life. And mastery and logic, those are really big things I value, as well as transparency. And good or bad over the years, Dale knows there's really no filter. I'll just tell you how I feel. And then in the middle, this is like the stuff that we'll talk a lot about today, tonight. It's really about P&G. I put P&G in the middle because if I'm being honest, it's really helped to enable my passion as well as my values. And I've been really lucky to work with P&G because it's really given me the opportunity to maximize like all these areas, as well as it's really instrumental in strengthening the values that I have, as well as some of the other discipline area. But here's a little flow of my history, and I'll go into it in a little bit. But I'm currently the e-commerce director, innovation director, managing our Costco business. But we'll go down a little bit in the history books here. I actually have a chemical engineering degree from the UW, not to be mistaken with University of Wisconsin, Dale, but UW from Seattle on the West Coast. So I have an engineering degree, and I interned for P&G in our manufacturing plant. And then I started with P&G working in a very technical area as a process engineer, a startup engineer, as well as operations and category management. And then a little bit through the beginning of my career, I switched over. I did a 180 and switched over to the sales and marketing side. And I think Dale, if he was still working with P&G in the beginning, he probably would have said, and you have joined the dark side. You've left the technical area. So I switched over and I worked on the Safeway team. You guys, if you live in Southern California, you're probably familiar with Bonds. That's part of the Safeway banner, which is now part of Albertsons. So I'm dating myself here. And then I've worked in areas of Gillette integration when we purchased Gillette, integrating the Oral-B business into our main oral care business. And then I've done strategy work across the major channels, Walmart, Target, US scaled projects. And then I've led our strategy work for innovation. So spent a lot of time working in Silicon Valley, leading our accelerator groups there, working and connecting and developing startup companies, bringing in like anything next gen retailer consumer solutions back to P&G. And then prior to my Costco role, I was the innovation leader on the Amazon team. So if you have questions later on in the next couple of slides about Amazon, I will share with you as much as I can. So I'm more than happy to kind of share that with you. So that's a little bit about my a snapshot of my career and kind of who I am, and kind of like everything that sandwiches around the P&G, the middle part of P&G. Okay, next slide, please, Dale. So I recall, you know, when I first started with P&G, I'm going to go into this Power of 5 notion. So when I first started with P&G, I felt a lot of angst. My parents did not want me to move away from Seattle to go all the way to California because there was no family in California, you didn't know anyone. And, you know, I don't know if it's the same for you guys. I'm 46 years old, but even back then, it's really hard to leave your family. It's just not something that you do. And so there was a ton of angst to even the notion of defying my parents. And so I had a lot to prove because I was leaving them when there were jobs to be had, you know, Microsoft, Intel, Starbucks, what have you, in Seattle for engineer. But I moved down here because I really liked the company when I interned. They thought I was kidding, right? When I interned for 2 summers, like, oh, she's not going to come back down. But, you know, because of that, I really threw myself into work. Working in manufacturing as an engineer, I would find myself working, you know, getting to work at 6 a.m. before the next shift started, before 6 a.m., and then work till 6 p.m. It was just like a constant wheel. And I didn't want to say no. And that was when I felt like I thought I had control, but I didn't really have control of what was happening in my life. And so I went to like a new hire town hall a couple years into my career, and there was like a VP, and I don't know if he got this from a book, from a show or whatever, but what really resonated with me was he said, you can be amazing at 5 things. But beyond that, you're doing it at your own risk. You're gonna like, you know, dilute something in your life, whether it's your health or your relationships or even like being good at whatever you've chosen to do. And it made a lot of sense for me. And that's actually stuck with me ever since, you know, that moment. And so for me, this Power of 5 that I'm going to talk to you about in the next few slides is really about choosing the role that you want to play, the role that you're able to deliver in life at your current stage in life. And I'm not saying these roles have to be stagnant. They may evolve, because for a while, like, family was very much different for me because I didn't have any kids. I wasn't married, right? And so the roles were all different. And I spent more time being a sibling. That was a role that I carved out back then. But so these are mine that I'm going to talk to you about today. Me, my own nuclear family, P&G, a role as a career woman, my role in the community, as well as friends. It's for me, like, all 5 of these roles help to empower me. Okay? All right. I'm really bad also at like presenting and then paying attention to chat. So if there's like questions that you have, please don't hesitate to ask me, because I'll just present and I'll not even realize like what is going on. Right. Okay, Dale.
No worries. We'll prompt you.
All right. So, okay. So next slide. All right, so I'm going to talk about this. The first role that I'm going to talk about is P&G. And most people will say, why aren't you talking about your family first? And quite frankly, to be honest, at 46 years old and having been with P&G for over 23 years, not counting my internship, it's really the longest relationship I've ever had, aside from my, you know, my parents and my brother and sister. It's honestly the longest relationships I've had. And I've learned so much having had you know, the opportunity to work with P&G. So I went through my career history slide earlier in the intro, but I wanted to share some really key pivotal moments in my career at P&G that I learned, the good and the bad, and hopefully some of that will resonate with you. And so I'll start with engineering. That was like the first function that I was in at P&G, and this really taught me life skills. This role, probably of all my P&G roles, just gave me the foundational skills that I needed to succeed at P&G. And I'll tell you, what they said was true. So if you hear things like you do have to work harder, smarter to get the same recognition as a woman and as a minority, is so much better now at P&G because we have leaders that look like us at P&G more so now than before. But all that was true back then. You know, at times I would get really frustrated. You know, we'd have a senior male engineer that I worked with, and he would take credit for my work. He would take credit for the other process engineers' work, the other women, and he didn't treat women really well. And so for some reason, and you know, he's now gone, he's retired, but like he was still working and he was in the position of power. And when you're new and when you're younger, what do you do, right? So what I learned, but I've always been the type, I hope, to have like not, you know, just sat there and be a victim. So what I learned was this whole notion of mentorship and networking within a small confine of your department and your plant. And I think this resonates with what Dale said earlier in terms of your organization and some of the functions that you guys do. So for me, it was really about finding that key decision maker that would influence my career, key decision maker that would have a seat at the table when discussions are being made about projects, about, you know, what happens in my department. Like that to me gave me control back. And so when I found that person, and don't just like go find any mentor, right? Find someone that actually wants to mentor you and that's good. That's got like, that you know in the group that the person has influence in the right areas. And so I was able to find these mentors, and it wasn't just finding them, right? It was demonstrating to them my worth and demonstrating to them why they would want to advocate for me and the results, and just reinforcing that when I would meet with them. And it really went, you know, it was just really a two-way relationship. And that's the other thing too, you know, when you're asking for a mentor or asking to expand your network, just know you're giving them something back too. And just trying to figure out like what's that mutual, I mean, most mentors don't ask for anything in return, but I always try to make sure that I give something back to my mentor, because I always feel like that's a two-way street. And it could be anything, you know, for me, because like my mentor knew I didn't have any role models growing up that worked in a, you know, corporate America. My dad was a mailman and my mom's an assembly blue collar worker. Like she would come and say, Anne, Marcia, I remember she would come and say, Anne, we've got a vice president working the plant today. He's visiting from Cincinnati. So Linda, Cincinnati P&G, right? So they come and visit from the mothership. So she would teach me how to do firm handshakes, look in the eye, the elevator speech. And then Myron, my other mentor, he was probably the first APA that they hired at the plant in Sacramento. And he took time to share with me APA traits, and at the time, you know, how we typically can come across based on the community and cultural influences that we have as APAs, and the traps that we could fall into if we weren't aware of those traits and didn't pause to maximize those traits and be aware of those traits so that we can be even more effective while working within the confine and trying to influence P&G to understand who we are as APAs. And so he would share like, you know, traps and you know, things that he fell into in his career. And it really taught me silent leadership. And it's really not about how loud you are. You know, how can you be effective while being authentic to your traits and who you are, but still be effective in understanding your audience that you're trying to influence. So that was really key for me. And I continue to try to perfect that day in and day out. And if you happen to be working in a corporate environment, it's not also about people above you that could mentor you. At the plant, for me, there were so many people below me, below my level, who worked for me, technicians that had been there for like 20, 30 years. They also took time to mentor me. And it's just really teaching me to understand and practice the values and principles and morals, you know, of my environment at that time. And so, you know, for me, overcoming some of those crazy things that happen when you're a woman in a very male-dominated world and in a big corporate America, just having the right network, the right people to watch out for you at the top as well as the bottom, that has really enabled me. So I always stop and make sure, and I try to teach my kids this too. It's not just about the people at the top, it's the people at the bottom every day that does the work that could really be your best advocate. So that was like a snapshot of the technical world. So I was going along and got promoted fairly quickly for my function, and then had a baby and decided, well, I don't think I want to travel 80% of the time anymore. And so actually at the time, there was no such thing as like one career stream at P&G. So if you went through a different function, you had to start over. So I actually took a demotion and a pay cut. And I think that's where like the whole lattice concept, came to life for me, because, you always think about moving up the ladder and it's the lattice. And it was weird because at the time, it was hard to reconcile because I had thought I knew what I wanted to do. And I was highly thought of in my organization in the technical area globally. And then I had to switch to sales and marketing where nobody knew who I was and I was starting over. And I think the big lessons, and Dale and Jen and I have talked about this, is, you could be the most type A person and you think you know what you're doing, but you don't have to figure it all out. There will be moments where you're going to have to change. And if you have to make the pivot and make the change, it is okay. But there are ways that I think you can cope to have a plan so that you can really control the chaos and control the unknown. There's ways around that. So for me, I really had to learn to reset. And so here's how I approached it. I said, well, this is like my new scenario. I'm not going up the ladder at this moment. I'm just like, I went down the rung on the lattice even. So I had to reset and really develop a vision. And it was just accepting the fact that I was going to have to start figuring out a way to get back up. And so developing, for me, it was, well, and then not even knowing who was there, right? Not knowing the network. It was developing a plan to figure out how to go up. And then also the plan for when things have to move sideways. And then if you're stalled where you're at, also a plan on how to psychologically handle and manage this notion of it is okay if you don't have to go up and down and you're kind of stuck. Because there may be times you're going to feel kind of stuck. And that was really key. I had moments where I struggled because I don't think I had prepared psychologically how I would feel, right? You go from, being an engineer and doing really well, and then you have to start over. I would imagine it's like if you had to start a new business and had to start over, how would you deal with that? And I think that's really important for people to kind of take stock of that, understanding how they think they will react and putting together a plan on how to manage those emotions. And so for me, just starting over, I had to restart, and I think from that point on, it really helped to solidify the process at which I use to kind of manage all these changes, whether it's going up, down, or sideways. It's always start with like, what's my next 2 to 5 year plan? That was my approach. Like, what do I want to be? What skill do I want to have? And there's some luck, right, that goes into that. And then what sacrifices you have to make. And so for me, I'm one of the e-com experts in the company, but it's been 10 years in the making. It was about looking at and saying, what am I passionate about? Like, what am I interested in? What are the trends? And I think I put together like one of P&G's first e-com playbook, and it was like a Word document where we embedded like, what's iMedia, what's CRM, what does all that mean? So just doing side projects on my own, and that was some sacrifice too. It's like doing extra work that nobody asked you to do, but wanting to learn, and then just meeting with my mentors and kind of sharing with them and socializing with them things that I had learned. And so, for me, e-com became a big thing, right? So the right place, the right time, with all the homework and research over the years, really enabled me to have the opportunities that I've had. And so I guess the key takeaway is really about maximizing your current role. In the career role that you have, the lattice, you can move up and down. Candyland, you can go back and forth. There could be some chaos, but whatever you're in, put together a plan to maximize the situation. What's my network? Who are my mentors? Where do I want to be in 2 to 5 years? And just put together an action plan for that. And then the one thing also that I wanted to share, and I share this with all my new hires, and I wish somebody had told me this at least 10 years ago, or I wish I had paid attention. If you are delivering results, that is not good enough to get promoted and to get to the next level. And I always thought, well, if I'm doing a good job, like they'll know, right? And so it wasn't until I complained to one of my mentors. I said, I don't know why like these people are getting promoted. I don't know what else I have to do. And she said, hey, the message track back in Cincinnati is, you're fine being in California. You're fine having this fun work and doing a great job. And you're just grateful, right? And you're not the squeaky wheel. And so that just like floored me, because I thought, wait, if I'm delivering results year in and year out, you like hadn't thought about putting together a plan for me to kind of get promoted. Wouldn't anyone want to get promoted? Wouldn't anyone want to get paid the max amount of money? So one of the things I've asked, and I've always taught my new hires ever since I learned this for myself, was you are delivering results, make sure you're getting that exposure, your network, your mentors to advocate for you, because without that exposure, it is not good enough. You may not be on somebody's radar. And then ask, make it hard for them to say no. Tell them why you deserve it and just ask, because the worst thing they say is no, right? And so I have found that I have gotten so much more that I deserved by asking than all those other years when I didn't ask. And so that's the one thing, is if I hope to leave you in a career discussion, is ask. And if you're a business person, if you're an entrepreneur, make the sale, close the sale, and do an assumptive close and say, can I get that order, or can you run my business? If you have a great product, a great service, and a great proposition, just ask. Don't be shy. Okay. Any questions there? That's a big chunk of the career discussion. But I talked a lot, and I want this to be kind of like a back and forth thing. So any questions that that triggered in your mind that you want to ask?
I think with the whole mentorship, it's also about finding someone who's going to be an advocate for you, right? Who's going to speak on your behalf, and who can also, defend you when they're brought up in conversations when you're not in the room, right?
Yep. I work remotely, so I'm in Northern California, and I've had teams where my mentors, or the people that decide my career for years, are in Cincinnati, New York, Seattle, what have you. And so you got to find those. There are different mentors. Hang on, sorry. There are different mentors where they're ones that are there to kind of help you figure out, how do I stage this conversation with so-and-so? How do I think about approaching, this strategy? And then there are mentors that are really there to help advocate for your career. So make sure you've got a good chunk of that. And if you're in corporate America, one of the other things that I found, having worked with the company for so long, is mentors retire. They quit the company. They go and move on to do other things. So make sure you always have a pipeline, right? Don't just put all your eggs in one basket, because I say, like, I had one year where in our formal system at P&G, you can put names of your mentors, so that way your manager could go and call and talk to those mentors. I think I had like 3 of my 4 mentors just retire, or left and to go to another company. So always have like a pipeline. And like I said, mentors, they can come in at all levels and all age. And so one of the best mentors and advocate for me, she's like 31. And I learned a ton from her. So don't just silo it to just a certain few. So cool. Next slide.
Oh, sorry. One more question before we move on mentorship. Sure. DM asked, what have you found that is the best way to ask, to ask what you're looking for or what you want to close on? I like that you mentioned assumptive closing for sales.
Yep. So Yim, I think that gets hard, right? When you're kind of shy, because it feels like you're in it for yourself, because you're asking for yourself. So now that I've been on the other side of the table, where I am mentoring a ton of people, I would say just ask them, just go up and say, hey, I saw that you did this and it really, registered with me, and I want this for my career, and I'm looking for, you know, this type of coaching, and I think you would be great at it, because you're probably reaching out to them because you know they've got some sort of strength that can help enable you, right? Or some sort of a skill, or they can advocate for you. So ask and say, hey, here's what I'm looking for, and I would love it if you had the time to mentor me. And then we could do, I don't know, I usually go, okay, let's do like a 30-minute join up. Usually I do like the first connect, I do a 30-minute join up just to ask, you know, what are they looking for? And then, you know, me as a mentor, I'm always also thinking, oh, what's in it for me? What can I get out of this? And it's not a career thing. It's just, what nourishment do I get, right, out of working with them? And so, you know, they'll benefit from it too, Yim. So don't hesitate to ask.
Yeah, I like that you brought that up, because sometimes it could be like a forced connection at first, but if you go in, you know, humble, or you go in just asking because you purely want to get to know them first before asking for their advice on something, then you're actually looking to create a relationship first.
Yeah, you have, definitely. You don't just go and say, I need this like now. The other thing that I've done in the past has been, you know, depending who that mentor is, and if I know specifically what their roles are and the types of projects they're leading, I'll do something extra and I'll bring something in. So let's say I've got like a mentor that is managing the drug channel, right? So what I've done in the past is just gone online and just checked out like anything relevant to the drug channel, all those trends that's happening. And I start and say, hey, I found something that I thought was really interesting that's happening in the trends I'm seeing with CVS and Walgreens. And I thought it was really fascinating. So I wanted to share it with you. And then I just thought, you know, hey, do you think we could add like a 15-minute discussion? And then that's when you kind of open up and ask them to see if they have the time to invest in you, to mentor you. So I try to give them something too.
I love that. I think, and also what I've been recently doing, and if it's not to, you know, progress your next career, it's just to get to know people around the office, just have coffee chats with people, right? Lately, my company, they've been like having HR talks or having these like virtual webinars. And that's a way for you to, you know, to make a connection, you know, start asking questions about their career, what interests them. You know, we're all human at the end of the day. So, and we're all craving human interaction with working from home. So don't hesitate to reach out to people just for the sake of getting to know someone more than just a name on paper.
Yeah, and then once they decide, and you decide that they're going to mentor you for the ongoing conversations, I would suggest to always go in with, hey, here's an update on what's happening in my world. Like, this is what's happening with my career, my role, my specific role, the project I'm working on. Give them an update, so then they get the sound bite, right? And then they can take that and they use that to go advocate for you. Hey, I heard like so-and-so Yim's working on XYZ, and she really liked this, and she says she really enjoyed this part of the process, or this part of the work and the strength that's coming out, because those are the people that are going to have those career discussions and the planning at the table that can bring like that soft side of you beyond the numbers and what's on the paper. And then hopefully they're looking out for you when they're having those discussions.
Right. Betty asks, how do you find a mentor if there's no one in your company that you feel is a good mentor?
That's the good one. I don't know. So I'll say candidly, at P&G, I don't know. I think I've never had a mentor say no, whether they're in the most absurd function. That's not even my function. It's a connection that I've had. So hopefully, you know, there are people that you are able to work with within the company, whether it's projects, multifunctionals that, you know, that resonate with you, that you can go and connect with. I also have mentors outside of work. So depending on what is it you're looking for, right? So the reality is, if you're within a company and you want to get promoted within that company, you really need to dig deep and find a mentor in that company to help you. Because somebody that's outside of the company can give you strategy and things like that. But if they're not, you know, at the table, it's really hard for them to influence your career and the things that you get to do.
My feedback for that would be, if you have peer mentors, that's also a form of mentorship, right? People who are on the same level as you. And like you said, even people below you, you know, one day, maybe a direct report or someone you've worked with cross-functionally, maybe they'll be your boss one day. So don't piss anyone off. And then also, what was I going to say? Oh, when you do have like these random coffee chats or, you know, water cooler chats, I would recommend asking them, you know, is there someone in their network that they would recommend you reaching out to? So as you're talking to more and more people, you kind of build that spider web of a network to.
Yeah, and I don't know if companies are different, but I mean, I've had, you know, one of the things that I have as a responsibility is my role also is to look for mentors for the people who work for me, especially for APAs and women and minority. And I don't know if I do it or it's just part of like the structure at P&G, but normally let's say somebody's in, and we just had this one question in our own APA group where somebody said, hey, there's a new hire that just started and the person's like an analyst. So who's like a rock star analyst that you could go and find to help, you know, coach this person on the side. So we've kind of reached out that way, but, you know, hopefully your manager is helpful and can help direct you to someone. Because, you know, for us, we're pretty, I don't know, it's just a P&G culture thing, but that's something that we're kind of expected to do. If somebody asks, right, we don't force it on someone, but if somebody asks, then I do look for someone for my employees.
Yeah, and I think if you really, really needed to, you can like start cold messaging people on LinkedIn in your industry to learn more about, you know, certain, like a different area or a different function, but still in the same industry. I mean, if you just have like your template and just start mass messaging, you know, who knows, maybe people are more forgiving and more willing to help out nowadays, since again, people are craving for interaction and curious. Always be curious when you're building your network, asking a lot of questions.
Yep.
Okay, so we can go back to the presentation now, Dale.
Yep. You go to the slide 5, Dale, the one after the lattice. All right. So this one is probably an extension of what we've been talking about. So my next role that I want to talk about is my role within my family and just being part of the family that I'm part of. So I think, so this is a pretty strong statement. I think you can have it all, but just not all at the same time. And for the life of me, I don't know any friends, and I've got pretty successful friends and family that have everything and all at once. I've not found anyone. So if somebody finds someone, that's pretty awesome. And just certainly not in a way that allows me to be everything that I want to be as a wife, as a mom, as a career person. I've not figured it out. And so I've kind of like stopped putting that pressure, mental pressure on myself. It's really about, you can have it all, but it may not be all at the same time. So how are you going to embrace that situation? And I would say like a few years ago, Sheryl Sandberg really pushed this lean in mentality in corporate America, at least with P&G. We were having like lean in circles and all that. And, you know, I felt kind of bullied for my decision because at the time I wasn't going up the ladder. I was like perfectly happy going sideways and working on meaningful high value work for P&G. And I love being able to put my kids to bed most of days. And so, you know, my girlfriends and I, we kind of said, you know, that didn't feel right. I don't feel valued just because I'm not going up the ladder. That means my career is not valued. And so we kind of said, hey, it's okay to recline back, and it is okay. And if that's success for you, then you're successful. To me, that is the definition of success, because it wasn't until I realized that, you know, it's really the vision that I define for the role that I want in this role. Because it was just causing stress in my life, and that just wasn't necessary. And so for me, it's like thinking about like reviewing your Power Five. What is the role that you want to play? And sometimes it can feel conflicting, right? You're reconciling because you're in a career and you want to move up, and then you got to also be that person, that role for your family. And so that's the one thing that I think was that when I realized that, it made life so much better, because as I mentioned earlier, I took a pay cut and a demotion, and it sucked, right? I'm not saying that was just yay happy. I focused on my family and that was just like the best decision ever. It really sucked, right? And so think about like mentally coping, psychologically getting ready for that. But you know, my goal was always able to like put my kids to bed most of the nights, take them to practice after school. Like that was really important to me. And I have, you know, I have really good kids and they're hella smart. And so I was going to be at every single assembly that my kids were going to have get those awards, because that was really important to me. And my managers knew that was really important to me. And so I made it clear, and they were so supportive that, you know, whenever those opportunities happen, I was there. But I'll say, it wasn't, like I said, there was always this constant mental reconciliation. And there was always like this fear of missing out, where honestly, for a while, I would struggle whenever someone I knew would get promoted, whether or not they deserved it, or when I'd work with someone who was higher up than me, and I knew more than them, and I was more capable than they were. And it killed me. You know, I'd come home from big meetings, and I would just really be bummed. So at one point, my husband said, "Hey, if you really want to move to advance your career, let's just move." And I think it wasn't until he just kind of like called my bluff, that I'm like, oh, well, okay. But then but then it really forced me to assess again what was important to me, and back to like define your role, put together your vision, and action your plan. I think it really shifted me and reminded me what was important, and it calibrated, the calibration really allowed me to think outside the box. So it wasn't about, God, I'm kind of stuck here and I really want to get promoted, but I'm stuck here, I'm on sideways, what's going on with my lattice? But just realizing that when my husband said, well, fine, let's move, then I paused, right? And I said, okay, what is really important to me? It's my family too, as much as my career. And so I think just that calibration, that recalibration, helped me to think outside the box. That was when I said, okay, in the role that I have now for what I want with my family and with work, how do I maximize this? And that's when I started really getting into like the innovation stuff, the e-com stuff, when it was like this tiny part of P&G, when nobody was paying attention. So I said, okay, I'll just throw myself into that. I think it's going to be a big deal 2 to 5 years from now. Let's see how it goes. And I think just that, that made it really, you know, helpful, as I was thinking through, you know, this whole, you can't have it all at the same time, but you can certainly have it all throughout the time. So cool. All right, and then I'll just go through quickly with these other 3 areas, because I know we're running into time. But friends, I think friends are really empowering. So I've got friends, Dale's in there. You know, I realized as I was thinking through my friends and the roles they played, I have this core group of friends, and I have what I find like pods that really help me as a career woman, and as a mom for all these other roles that I want. I've got friends that like help me make like all the decisions in life, sometimes all the big decisions. And they're the ones that like teach me how to deal with life, how to manage work and strategize. And I've got friends as a mom that, you know, who doesn't want a bunch of soccer moms that will drink beer with you at 8 o'clock in the morning, when you find yourself those good soccer moms. So, but they can really help to enable you, because there's different parts of your life and roles that you have. So I find that, and then, you know, the friends that you have that, you know, maybe you're not as close of a friends, not as relevant. I call them kind of like energy vampires. It just takes so much energy to engage with them that it's okay to let go too. So for me, you know, that's just been really important to me. And that's it on the friends piece. And then I'll go a couple more, Dale. The community one. This one is really, it's become really important to me. It wasn't even on my list, I would say, you know, 5 years ago. I did some work, but it wasn't like that big of a thing. And so I think for those of you guys who are into, you know, service and this whole notion of community at a young age, if you guys are in your 20s and 30s, I really applaud that. For me, I found what I was passionate in and what I loved through actually P&G. That's how I got started. Because I wasn't about to go and sign up and do a laundry list of things that weren't meaningful to me. But just like during the recession in 2008 and 9, learning about the underserved, and then working in Silicon Valley with women startups and working pro bono with them to advise them, to help their business, I learned a ton, and actually enabled me to kind of give back to P&G in a way, because I learned so much from a startup standpoint. So I would say, you know, find something that you're passionate about, and then go for it and make it meaningful. And for me, it's like, it's going beyond my circle too, because I think if I just stuck with a group of my friends, I don't think they would have come up with some of these ideas. So there's opportunities all around you. So I would encourage folks to continue to do that. And then the last slide, it's a little bit generic, but you know, it's about placing your mask over your own mouth before assisting others. It's about me. And I would say, you know, we kind of get really lost in those other roles, the 5 roles, right? But just make sure you find who you are and define it, and then have a plan, have a getaway plan too. I always, like, I hope women, my fellow women, will know, you know, have a plan on where you want to be in life, and make it like an integrated plan with your partner, your family, but also have a plan for yourself too. What are you going to be, beyond, you know, supporting everybody else in those 4 roles that you've just I've just talked earlier. All right, so that's what I have.
Okay, awesome. We have a question from Lisa that she just sent. Thank you for sharing your story. I was curious, how did you approach the conversation of switching departments from engineering to marketing with your manager? And as a fellow woman of color in corporate America, how do you make yourself heard and assert yourself in busy meetings, especially when you mentioned silent leadership, I guess?
Yep. So the first one, that was really hard. I had 2 managers I reported to. One was very supportive. He's super progressive. And one, I was the superstar until I told him I wanted to leave engineering, and then he didn't want to have anything to do with me. So you know, there was a risk, because the risk was there would be no role for me. And so through networking and people that I met in the sales group, like in APA functions that I kept in contact with, I introduced myself to the sales and marketing organization that I was going to, and so I started networking there. This is the one thing, is that if you're going to switch function, make sure you do the work, because nobody's going to do that work for you. So know where you want to be and network with them and get to know those roles. And as they become available, that's when you start your plan. And I would say, even at the same time, have those ongoing conversations with your manager. I knew when I was pregnant and I was going to have my child, I wasn't sure how I would be able to handle being gone 80% of the time, because my role at the time involved a lot of traveling. And so I had the discussion with my key manager before I went out on maternity leave. I said, you know, I'll come back and I will do my best, but I may not be like my full self, and I know I won't be able to travel as much. And so they were willing to find a role for me to stay within my engineering function, but they weren't like the roles that I was passionate about. And I knew that for engineering, it wasn't the career path that was going to take me to places I want to go long term, based on just the location needs that I had. And so I did the homework, and I actually got an offer with the new organization. And that's when I said, hey, I've been looking for a job and I found something and they want me, so can you just release me? And we've had this conversation for the last 3 to 4 months. So it wasn't a surprise, right? Don't surprise them. You know, I think if you're having these annual assessment with your manager, which I hope you are, you know, share with them, like, these are my career aspirations, these are my personal goals, and this is what I want to go do. So then they're not surprised. And then, you know, they knew I had their alignment to say, I'm going to go look for other roles if nothing fits, what I want. And they said, yeah, we're supportive, just go find, and if we can, we'll help you. And then it was my job to go find the role in the other functions. And so it's a 2-way conversation, but you really got to be upfront with your manager. So, okay, the next question is, how do you, so in meetings, so I guess the thing with meetings is we're all probably in a million meetings all the time. So for me, how I approach this is to make myself heard is, you know, you want to be deliberate, right? And so there's 2 things. My boss knows that I do not enjoy, and I don't do well from like a Myers-Briggs standpoint. I don't like it when things are sprung on me, because how I operate is I need to know about it like at least 30 minutes ahead of time so I can absorb it, and I can be really deliberate and strategic about what I say in meetings. So, you know, the people that influence your career, that are judging you, I guess, should be your manager and some of your immediate work group. And so ideally you're meeting up with them and you're kind of sharing some of your style with them. That's what I have learned to do. Like first thing when I have a new group or when I have a new manager, I'll go and say, hey, this is kind of like how I operate. I'm not saying that I can't function the other way. It's just that you're not going to get my best. And so so that's kind of like how I approach it. And then there are things that, you know, I'll make sure, you know, whatever work I'm working on, that I'm on the agenda if it's part of, you know, if it makes sense for the agenda. So I try to make it structurally be part of the agenda, and then so that people know who I am, I have these one-on-one connects with my stakeholders, you know, and then I tell them my style and I try to understand their style too, and that really helps. That's helped me. Okay, there's another question. Did I answer your question, Lisa? Okay. Let me know if I didn't. Okay, what is it like to work with Amazon? Well, I'm not on the Amazon business anymore, but it's like a freaking roller coaster every day. You never know what they're going to invent next, and you never know what's going to come out. And so I would say what I absolutely love about working with Amazon is people are very progressive in their thought. There's no no, right? Of course, they're going to negotiate with you for money and all that, but I love the culture where there's no such thing as no. There's going to be a technical solution for everything. So I love that. And I love that we can get into the data and we can optimize. And I think for the most part, the folks that I have worked with at Amazon, they really put the shoppers at the forefront. Whether they do it right or not, when they do something, there's meaning behind it. They've tested it. Now, I wish they put a little bit more of the humanity behind it and the art of thinking and making decisions and designing the UX and the experience so it's better, because I think they get too techy sometimes and they get lost in the numbers and the algorithm. So I wish it were different, but I think the intent of putting people first, shoppers first, you know, from the retail side, I think they're really fun to work with. Yeah, great for shoppers. Sometimes, yes, not good for sellers. Hey, we are a manufacturer that sells to Amazon, and I know how tough it is to work with them day in and day out. So I feel your pain. Maybe not so much from a third-party marketplace standpoint, but I can certainly feel your pain from a first-party standpoint.
That's funny. And fun fact, Urban Decay, which is owned by L'Oreal, is the brand that I worked on. We just launched on Amazon yesterday. So we've gone to the dark side too, but at least we're in control.
But may make a plug. If you guys are Costco shoppers, there's a buy 100, get $25 gift card P&G promotion at Costco all September. So go help pay for my kids' college tuition that's coming up in a year. So
do it. Big Costco fan. Not sponsored.
And buy it online if you can.
Oh, yes.
All right. What other questions do you have?
I have like a one-off question. When you were talking about how you were transitioning your career and after becoming a new mom, how do you say no when you've reached your limit, I guess? I think part of it was because you were kind of in a situation where you wanted to do something that you were more passionate about. But if you're taking on more work because you can handle it, you know, how do you say no? And have you ever been in a situation where you were, you know, you had to say no to your manager or to someone who in a high up position?
Sure. I would say so George Levison was one of my managers when I came back. I want to call their names because they're so meaningful to me. And I feel like I stand on the shoulders of a lot of great men and women. And for me, it's been a lot of great men because I think I've only had like 3 female managers, and that's been like the last 5 years. But I came back from maternity leave and he said, hey, this is a marathon. It is not a sprint. And I say this to all my female managers that have come back from mat leave. So I was lucky in that way, but it's corporate America. You're going to get stuff, right? And so what I really use at P&G is I have our annual work plan. So if it's work that doesn't line up with what I had aligned to, the nice thing is we can kind of push back. Now, that being said, I rarely push back on strategic work. If they're busy work, I will say no. And I will say, sorry, it's not value added. And you told me I should push back when it's not value added, so I'm pushing back. Or I'll say, hey, is there a better way of doing this? But I would say if it's strategic work, I think we can find a way to not do some of the other stuff on our work plan that's more immediate. Or, if it's not urgent, I'm not going to work on it. So I've just, I think, and maybe it's a culture at P&G, but I think as long as we deliver the results, nobody cares that we don't want to do the not so important things. And so that's just allowed me to not work on important, non-prioritized things. And so a lot of times I'll have like a 30, 60, 90-day work plan, short-term plan and long-term plan, and that really helps. And it's just getting the alignment from your boss. And if you really can't do it, you say, hey, I just don't have enough time in the day. So what has to drop off in order for me to do this? If it is so important to you, like something has to drop off. So what do you want to pick for me to drop off? So I've had those conversations too.
Mm-hmm. Very true. I think those are all my questions, and we're pretty much out of time. So if there aren't any burning questions, any closing remarks, I guess, Anne? Any key takeaways if we've forgotten the last hour of your conversation?
I've talked so much.
I know, all great content.
I would say if there's anything to take away, it's just define the 5 roles that you're going to be amazing at, and it is okay to let go of the other stuff. And then put together a plan, a 2 to 5 year plan, whether it's your family, maybe longer for your family, your work. Put together a plan and then put down what has to be true. What do I have to action? And then I just check off that list and I just go with that. And so just define those 5 roles and what's the plan. And then I would even say, make sure though you take time to say, for however the progress is, psychologically, how are you going to cope with the results, good or bad?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you write it down or put it on your computer or whatever, it holds yourself accountable, right? Yeah. The more you talk about it, the more you'll fake it until you make it.
Yeah, I might just text it to Dale, and if I keeps it sometime, and then check in with Dale. Did I do? Just kidding.
He gives me these rants every once in a while on text. They just a flurry start popping out. And thank you so much.
You bet.
Yeah, it's been great.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining.
Yeah, so thank you everybody for joining us. This is our first corporate event. We've had a lot of entrepreneur events, so it was great to have Anne here. And Anne, thank you so much. I don't know if you guys found me that pyramid. I was just one upper left on that side.
Oh, what?
The pyramid that you showed, the picture of us.
Oh, yes.
Down on the left. Yep.
She literally had the support of friends to be sitting
I did. It helps to be the tiniest one. So always good to be on the top.
So yeah, check us out. We're ACELleaders.org. That's 1L. We also are on Facebook at ACEL. I think it's Asian Corporate and Entrepreneur Leaders SoCal chapter. We have chapters in Las Vegas, San Jose, and our flagship chapter in Phoenix. And there's a lot of collegiate chapters as well in Arizona. We're glad we talked about mentorship, because mentorship is actually a program that the national organization does a lot, and we hope to bring that to SoCal as well. So other than that, Jen, you want to take us home?
I don't have anything else to say.
Okay. Well,
thanks for joining. Thank you for joining, and thank you for joining our Women Empowerment Series, and hope you join the next 2 that we have lined up over the next 1 to 2 months. Thank you, Anne.
Awesome. Bye, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.